that has created an environment of very much kind of fight or flight. And it's not very healthy to stay in that fight or flight system for a long time. So I think the more we can find ways to come back to a new normal, whatever that's going to look like, the healthier we will all be.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another CM conference call. I'm Louisa Daley, a CM reporter, and today I'm joined by Sallie Coventry, who is the founder of Coaching Plus, and she is also an integrated coach therapist. If you didn't know already, April is Stress Awareness Month, so what better time to talk to Sallie about how stressful our industry can be to work in, and she's going to also share her top tips on how we can manage stress in a healthy way. Hi Sallie, how are you?
I'm great, thank you, Louisa.
Good. Thank you for joining me. Just to introduce yourself to the audience, just so they can understand the background, could you tell me who you are and what do you do?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. So for 20 odd years, I was on the front line, organising events in a delivery role, and then increasingly more sort of senior management positions, working in a number of different communications and events agencies. So very much have kind of been there, like many of your readers, the audience, actually kind of figuring out how to do these creative requests for clients. But about 5 years ago, I started to kind of rethink my career, and I realized the thing that I really loved about my job was the people, and I wanted to find a way to focus on that primarily. So I decided to retrain as an integrated coach therapist. Which is a little bit different to a regular coach, bringing the kind of therapeutic appropriate interventions in. It allows us to work a little bit deeper and sometimes maybe unlock those things that we don't even realize are holding us back, and sort of feel like we're actually making progress and sustaining positive change. And so now I work with organizations, primarily agencies, to help them and their people be the best versions they can of themselves.
Oh, lovely. And it must be, really beneficial for you and your clients, particularly since you kind of have that perspective of you've worked in events and you're a coach / therapist. So when you kind of talk to your clients, as we all know, the events industry is one of the most stressful industries we can work in. What reason do you think this is? And kind of from a client perspective and experience, what have you heard?
Yeah, I think, as you said, I think it's number 3 in the kind of list of most stressful jobs that you can do out there. And I think for me, one of the kind of really contributing factors to that is we have a very fixed, immovable deadline. You don't get to say to a client, I'm really sorry, we're going to be 2 weeks running your event because a supplier's let us down, or the content that you're supposed to have given us isn't ready. So there's this sort of big sort of compression as we get closer and closer to the event day. And, everybody ends up working longer and longer hours, and so we get tired, etc. So I think that is kind of the first thing that comes to mind, is that, the show must go on. It doesn't really matter what's happened around it. We've got to pull it out of the bag somehow on the day. And then I think the other factor is this really complicated ecosystem that are events. Often the clients that we might be working with on a day-to-day basis, they're not the final decision makers. They're representing other people in the organization. Sometimes those people aren't always aligned, so you're getting kind of mixed messages, or the goalposts are moving. Then you've got the kind of the project team itself, and that might be a combination of freelancers and permanent employees. So you've got that whole mechanism of storming, norming, forming, performing, which, you're going through every time you run an event. And then depending on the nature of the event, of course, you've got, maybe a combination of agencies that are working together, providing different services. And then you've got the broader supply chain. And all of that changes every single time we run an event, because it's very unusual for us to do exactly the same thing with exactly the same people in the same location. And then add on top of that, we might be working in multiple different languages or in cultures that are kind of more unusual, more unfamiliar to us. And then, of course, we're in a whole new world post-Brexit, post the pandemic. So we're figuring out how to do stuff in a different way that we did kind of standing on our head 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure everyone listening who are event profs 100% agree with you. Touching on the pandemic part then, do you think that it's kind of impacted work stress, I'll name it, in a positive or negative way? What's your view on that?
I think it's a real mix, and I think it depends on what your experience of the pandemic has been like. For some people, it's been really liberating, not having long commutes or having the flexibility to kind of do other things during their working day. I think for other people, it's been very isolating. And whereas you might have seen a colleague looking a bit kind of wobbly, or, had a chat with somebody while you're making a cup of tea and, been able to offload a little bit, it's very hard to do that in this kind of virtual world that we've all been working in. So, yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. And I think we've been on this incredible learning curve for the last 2 and a bit years. We've all been figuring out how to do things that we've broadly haven't done before. And consequently, there's been a lot of kind of additional stress. And, let's name it, there have been a lot of agencies that have had to make tough decisions about employees and redundancies and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that has created an environment of very much kind of fight or flight. And it's not very healthy to stay in that fight or flight system for a long time. So I think the more we can find ways to come back to a new normal, whatever that's going to look like, the healthier we will all be. Yeah,
and what would be your, I'd say, top tips for event profs managing stress, whether they're working from home or, working in the office?
Yeah, I think it's different for everyone, to be honest with you, Louisa. And I think it's really important that we each take the time to almost kind of tune in to what works for us. What do we notice sort of maybe if we've got this anxiety sitting here, or we feel that our heart rate's going up? What are the things that sort of help us sort of drop that back down again? And as I'm talking to you now, I'm looking out the window and I can see buds on the trees and blossom, and the sun's just coming out. And for me, that's very calming. I find that that helps me just sort of settle back down. For other people, it might be putting on a great piece of music and dancing around the kitchen like a crazy person, or the project office on site. I think it can be breathing. There are loads and loads of brilliant breathing techniques out there that just sort of help us center on our body and sort of try and slow down. I think it's really difficult to shut out, but at least slow down our thoughts that usually are what betray us. But I think probably the universal thing is having a tribe, having people that you can chat to in the office or at home, that you can kind of vent, but in a healthy way, some of this stuff. And, obviously, in my experience, there's a real power in saying something out loud rather than letting it just come run wild in your head. So for me, I think that's super important, to kind of know who the people are that you're going to pick up the phone to, and, that can, and maybe even help you solve whatever it is that you're worried about, because they've got experience, or two heads are better than one. So yeah, finding your tribe, I think, is the number one thing.
Yeah, thank you, Sallie, so much for sharing those top tips. I'm sure, people watching, they won't just use them in Stress Awareness Month this month. They'll use it throughout their career. So thank you for your time today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Louisa.
And thank you for everyone watching. I'll see you next time.